Here's a 60-cent overnight profit trade that I took on AMAT that I actually didn't really announce in the chats because initially I thought it was not a very good trade and I didn't really want people to follow it, and I was prepared to take the loss on it. So here's where I entered short right there, and it was a little bit of a rash decision because that short right in that position corresponds to this downward sloping 5-minute trend line being rejected right through here. And you can see that I shorted on this candle and immediately it pulled against me. And you can see right here, I shorted on that candle as well of the break to the low of the day, but I didn't wait for confirmation. So I actually got faked out. But the reason why I stayed in the trade and the reason why I was ultimately able to win it was because I had a couple things on my side. So first, there really wasn't that much relative weakness on this stock. So you couldn't really tell what was going on. But my thesis was that we were going to start to see more and more relative weakness on it because it had broken this algo line. And here's the evidence that I had for that, the fact that this was an algo line. This is a barely elevated volume candle, but we see it come straight across, bounce off on there, get stopped right through there, even though it broke the SMA, it just stopped and hovered. Then on the Monday, we try to break it after we gap down and it gets rejected. So we have the rejection on top of that. The volume starts to come up. Then on the Tuesday, we get this elevated volume and it still can't break over top. And then if you look at these candles, even though the indicator doesn't show relative weakness, this is what it looks like on SPY. So that big giant Friday drop, cool. It drops AMAT, but AMAT actually doesn't get below its algo line. And then we have this day, which actually kind of finishes green on the day, even though it's a bearish hammer. But AMAT doesn't finish green on the day. It finishes red on the day. So that's the inflection point right through there where this algo break kind of changes the story for the stock. So I'm going short on this day with the thesis that this is actually an algo line. The institutional buying has decided that it's going to start selling this thing and we're going to start seeing some relative weakness on this thing. And the price action shows weakness on this candle and a little bit on this candle because the wick isn't quite as deep. So that's why I shorted. Obviously, I got trapped by all the chop. But the reason why I held overnight was that thesis. The second part of the thesis was that we had this big SMA over top and SPY hadn't broken it. So we were still underneath or just generally overall bearish for the macro thesis, for the longer term thesis. And I knew it was going to be low volume and super choppy, but as long as it kind of stayed under that line, cool. So Wednesday rolls around and it gets a little freaky because we get this drop, this bounce, and then we get over the SMA, but we start to see these topping tails on top of here. We know it's generally low volume. And on top of that, AMAT does not gap up the next morning. So now I'm feeling a lot more confident. So not only do I have my longer term thesis, my algo line thesis, but now I'm starting to see that relative weakness start to show in AMAT. So this trend line through here starts on Tuesday night and continues through on Wednesday morning. And that was my mental stop. So if I saw something confirm as a break above there, I would take the loss on AMAT. But we didn't. We saw this bounce, a big drop. Now I know I'm not going to get a ton of profits over this thing. I could have held it to here and back down lower, but I decided to take my profits right there after that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stacked candles. We've got relative weakness all morning. We've got a nice little volume kind of finish right through there. And like I said before, really choppy day, so take profits a little bit quicker. So that's a little bit more of a complicated trade that worked out in my favor. Obviously, it might not have, hence the mental stop up through there. But that was my thesis on the trade. So you can start to see these lines. You can start to read the candles, the price action within the context of SPY. And you can start to see clues and evidence for what the big boys are doing, what the institutions are doing. And this is one example of that.